Hello again, Bobcats, and I promise you this will be the last video in today's lesson for government interaction with markets for resources or markets for goods and services. We are now in the 21st century. That's the century that we're in right now, right? Well, let's talk a little bit about it. Two major economic issues, plural, occur at the beginning of the 21st century. The housing market kind of just falls apart, okay? And many people lost their jobs. What kind of workers? Well, probably if it's the housing market, we have construction workers, realtors, architects, things like that, anything that have to do with building homes, okay? A lot of people lose their jobs. The second crisis at the beginning of the 21st century, in 2020, this might sound familiar to you guys, the coronavirus crisis affects the economy negatively, okay? So let's talk about the financial crisis first. And there's a lot of confusing working parts here. I'm not really going to explain anything about the housing market or really what the housing market is, okay? All that you need to know is that it's a major industry in the United States, and it kind of just fell apart in 2007, 2008. And what happens with this is in 2008, several major businesses, and some of these businesses happen to be banks, big banks that loaned huge amounts of money to different people buying homes in the form of a mortgage. A mortgage is kind of like a loan for a home, right? Okay, but several major businesses, they're on the verge of failing, or they might have already declared bankruptcy. Okay. Now, the federal government looks at those major businesses, and what they say is they say that these businesses are so large, they're such an important part of the economy, that if we were to let these businesses fail, it might create even worse situations, perhaps something akin to the Great Depression. So, because we'll remember, part of the Great Depression was banks failing, right? Okay. So, the government, what it does is it assists these businesses. What it does is it actually just gives direct money in the millions and billions of dollars. They assist these businesses with money. Where's that money coming from? Well, if you guys know, the money that the government holds on to, we've talked about this, those are taxes paid by households and businesses. So those are taxpayer dollars. Now you can imagine, this was a very important thing to be done, and this was probably a good decision in order to avoid larger repercussions to our economy at large. However, you can also imagine if you're one of these, say, construction workers who's out of a job, and you're watching this major corporation receive billions of dollars in assistance from the federal government, even though they failed, you can imagine that that construction worker, who is probably also unemployed, doesn't feel too happy about that. And this decision, it helps the economy, but it does make a lot of people quite angry. A lot of people see this as, where's my help? If you're going to bail out large corporations or businesses, who's bailing out the households? Okay? So taxpayer dollars going to help out failing businesses after the financial crisis of 2007, 2008. The last thing we're going to discuss today is something that you're probably pretty familiar with because you've been living it. And I really want you guys to focus as much as you possibly can on this last part here, okay? The coronavirus stimulus, you've probably heard about this in the news, okay? What does it mean to stimulate something? It means to get it moving, right? Okay, to stimulate something is to get it to move, right? Or to get it to do something. The idea here is to get the economy moving. With the coronavirus and businesses needing to shut down, or having limited hours, or only dining outside, or movie theaters, they can't have anybody come in, right? At least for a few months they couldn't. What happens here is there's going to need to be some sort of assistance from the government to help out not just households but also businesses here, okay? Because during this pandemic, many businesses are not only do they need to close because that's a smart thing to do during a pandemic, but in some cases they're actually required by law to close. That's a tough thing to happen to you if you're a business owner, okay? So this is also a difficult thing, though. If you're a business owner, you probably hire workers to work for your business. So this is also a difficult thing for households as well. Direct payments from the stimulus go to households. Why? Well, one really good way to stimulate the economy is just to give some money to the households. What are they going to do with it? They're going to buy goods and services. Who are they buying goods and services from? From the businesses. How are the businesses making goods and services? They're buying factors of production. Who owns the factors of production? The households, right? That's that whole circular flow there all over again, okay? When you put money into the system, when you give households money, they're going to spend it on goods and services. And that is a way for both households and businesses to kind of help each other, okay? To help the economy at large. This was a good idea. I think this was important, okay? There's also going to be specific assistance for the businesses too, though. And you might have heard of this law right here. I already wrote this in for those of you that are missing your term. Paycheck Protection Program. This is your missing term. Don't miss it, okay? Paycheck Protection Program. Let's take a look at that word for word. What's a paycheck? It's the money you make. Protection, like a guard, like it's protecting that paycheck. Program, it's a law of some sort. Businesses that had to shut down, they might have 5 employees, but they might also have 500 employees, right? What happens to those employees if the business has to shut down for 2 months during a pandemic? They still need to make a paycheck because they've got mouths to feed. They've got families to feed, right? So with the Paycheck Protection Program, what happens is the government gives money to businesses to pay workers during quarantine, lockdown, and any other measures taken to fight the coronavirus pandemic, okay? So just a quick review, 21st century, we're only 20 years into it. We've had 2 major economic crises, okay? The first one was the housing market crash of 2007, 2008, where the U.S. government bailed out failing businesses, very large businesses. This was a good idea for the economy, but it made many people angry. Coronavirus stimulus, it's stimulus because direct payments to households to buy goods and services, but also direct payments to businesses to give paychecks to those workers as well. It's going to kind of just stimulate the entire economy. Okay? All right. And that concludes our lecture on government and its role in market.